Antonia found herself alone early in life. Her father had passed away years ago, and she lost her mother during her 5th year of college. It was an incredibly difficult time. Her thesis defense was approaching, and then this profound grief. But she found support in the parents of Jacob, now her only close family. They had studied together and had been dating since their junior year. Jacob's parents, Mary and Peter, were warm and kind to Antonia. They had also respected her mother deeply. Everyone was just waiting for them to finish school so the young couple could get married. They had a modest wedding. Antonia was heartbroken that her mother hadn't lived to see the day. She also remembered her mother's words, "Before the wedding, make sure you get a checkup, my dear." Antonia knew what her mother was warning her about. As a child, she had a serious injury when she fell awkwardly from an icy slide. She underwent lengthy treatment, and doctors worried it might affect her future reproductive health. She was monitored, of course, but no one could give a definitive answer. It was disheartening. Before the wedding, she had another checkup, as her mother advised, but despite a generally good recovery, the possibility of having children remained uncertain. First, Antonia spoke with her future mother-in-law, who pondered for a moment and then replied, "If there's even the slightest chance, don't get upset prematurely. I'll talk to Jacob myself." After his bachelor party, Jacob came to her place, slightly tipsy and upset. "I really want kids, Tony. You understand. What if we can't have them? Will that even be a family?" She started to cry, telling him it was his decision. But they could try. The doctors had left her with some hope, and Jacob, was the only man she had ever loved. After their first year of marriage, there was no positive result. Mary worried no less than her daughter-in-law, whom she loved very much. She and Peter made considerable efforts to save their son's marriage and sent Antonia to a specialized clinic for fertility treatment, known for its good results and potential to make dreams come true. But even this didn't help. After 2 years, it became clear there was no hope. Antonia was distraught. Her husband supported her as best he could, but their marriage began to falter. Jacob didn't blame Antonia, but he also couldn't accept a childless life. Antonia suggested adopting. "Let's adopt a baby. We'll raise them as our own." But Jacob refused. "That child won't ever be mine, and I don't think I could give them my fatherly love. Please understand, Tony, I just can't." Surprisingly, his parents supported him. They knew how much their son dreamed of having his own child. They felt it would be wrong to pretend. Why ruin a child's life if they would grow up feeling unloved? Antonia was the one who brought up divorce. Even though she loved her husband deeply, she didn't want to torment him. "Let's separate, Jake. You're young, you'll find another wife, and you'll have children." He didn't make the decision immediately, but when he met Olivia, a young and energetic colleague who had just started working with them, he immediately knew she was his destiny. The conversation with Antonia was difficult, primarily for him. He felt like he was betraying her, abandoning her, but she responded, "Everyone has their own destiny, and you deserve a better one. I agree. Don't blame yourself." That same evening, Jacob left her home, taking his belongings. Later, his parents visited her. "Tony, please forgive us for not influencing Jacob. Remember when he stayed with us a couple of times? He came home drunk, upset. We were afraid he'd turn to alcohol. Neither of you would have a life." They drank tea, talked heart to heart, comforting her, promising they would never abandon her and would continue to help. Peter confirmed that she would always be like a daughter to them. But what good were these conversations? Tony agreed to everything, thanked them, and then cried all night. Their divorce was quick. They didn't divide their property. Tony remained alone in her parents' apartment where she and Jacob had lived. Jacob remarried soon after. She wasn't alone for long either. Pretty and with a good disposition, she met a man named Paul. He tried his best to surround her with care, but there was one problem. Toni didn't love him. She still dreamed of her ex-husband, as if he wouldn't let her go. In her dreams, he didn't look happy. His eyes were sad, and he reached out his tender hands to her, but couldn't quite grasp her. She fought with herself, pushing away thoughts of Jacob. She desperately wanted to change her life. One winter, Toni fell seriously ill. One evening, she was at Paul's place, had cooked dinner, cleaned up, and then felt unwell. By nightfall, her temperature soared. He called an ambulance and kept Toni at his place. But the next morning, he was somber and thoughtful. He didn't say anything to her, taking care of her himself. When she finally recovered, he confessed, "That night, I barely left your side. You were delirious and calling for him. You grabbed my hands, called me Jake, and begged me not to leave. Do you still love him?" Toni didn't try to justify herself or lie to a good man. "Yes, I do. I think I'm a one-man woman. It's hard for me, Paul. I can't build a relationship without love." And she left forever. He didn't object. Soon after, Antonia learned that Jacob had a long-awaited son. It was another blow. She felt profound emotional pain. The loss seemed final and irreparable. She lived in a fog for 3 years. Sometimes Jacob's parents visited her just as they had promised. They offered moral support. She held no ill will towards them, nor towards her ex-husband. One day, she saw him with his little son in the park, but she didn't approach, and he didn't notice her. Again, tears, and unyielding love and resentment towards fate. But finally, she began to recover somewhat. The main thing was that he was happy. His parents said he had a good, caring wife, but that she was somewhat distant with them. They loved their grandson, Eddie, very much. They asked her not to hold grudges. "I'm not, really. He never deceived me. He loved me in his own way. And I insisted on the divorce myself." On her birthday, Jacob unexpectedly called, just as a friend. He wished her well, asked about her life, and wished her happiness. Toni decided his parents had put him up to it, but the call unsettled her again. It would be better not to communicate at all. Another year passed, and then tragedy struck. Olivia, Jacob's wife, became ill. Mary called her one day and said there was no hope. She cried, pitying her son and grandson. Antonia was beside herself. She worried about him. The poor woman couldn't be saved. At the cemetery, Antonia stood behind everyone. She didn't even know why she came. She just couldn't stay away. Soon, her former mother-in-law approached her, hugged her shoulders, and quietly said, "Thank you, my dear. There's no malice or schadenfreude in you." Jacob still didn't notice her. He called several months later. He was brief, asking if he could visit. Toni didn't refuse. Let him come. He was probably struggling. How he had changed. He looked gaunt, aged beyond his years. Grief doesn't suit anyone. They sat at the laid table and talked about life. "Why haven't you remarried?" he asked, to which Toni simply replied, "I love you. I don't need anyone else." And Jacob cried. It was both strange and touching. She had never seen him cry before. "Let's go to my parents' place. Eddie is there. I need to pick him up. Then we can go for a walk if you don't mind." The boy was good, sweet, just very withdrawn, which was understandable. Losing a mother at such a young age is a terrible ordeal for a child. Antonia tried to remain neutral, not pressing the little one, but he looked at her with curiosity. Their meetings gradually became regular, almost every weekend. Without obligations or promises, they simply brightened each other's solitude. But one day, Mary called her and said that Jacob intended to ask Toni to come back to him. He just hadn't mustered the courage yet. It was hard for him. A year had passed, he was still grieving, and the child was suffering. Antonia immediately called her ex-husband and said she agreed. No one was more precious to her, and no one ever would be. They started living together again. It wasn't easy. Jacob was distant and quiet, and she had to learn to love a child that wasn't her own.
It wasn't until her next birthday, when little Eddie gave her his drawing, depicting the three of them under the sun, with Mum written above her in a child's hand, that Tony broke down in tears. She hugged the little boy and said, "Your mummy is watching over you and is happy you're such a good boy. And I love you too. You're my son now." They lived happily now. Jacob has thawed, accepted her love, and become his old self again, affectionate and caring. And Antonia was finally happy. She had regained everything she had dreamed of for so many lonely years. She wasn't religious, but she sometimes still went into a church and lit a candle for the soul of the woman who had left this world but had given her both a beloved son and a loving husband.